You're listening to the Simply Flawsome Show, a podcast designed for you to listen, learn, and leverage. Please welcome your host, Zoe Turner.
I've got a really exciting guest for you all today. Today I'd like to welcome Marcus Taylor to the podcast. Marcus is the managing partner of TSM. The venture is a strategic move to lead the evolution in the recruitment industry, and he's currently working on a project that is about to change the way recruitment works. So today's podcast is all about artificial intelligence and recruitment. So I'd love to welcome Marcus to the podcast today. Hi, Marcus.
Hey, how are you doing? I'm waiting for this exciting person to arrive.
Okay. So Marcus, first of all, would you give the listeners a brief background on your backstory and how you got to be where you are today?
Well, that's a bit of a loaded question. I guess I fell into recruitment accidentally. And I'll give it the very short story. Arrived here in 2006, I think it was, if memory serves me correctly. And I've been stuck in the recruitment industry, mainly in construction, for the last 15 years. And that's really what brings me today. Arrived here with a backpack and a laptop, and now I've got 2 cats, a dog, a wife, a kid, and in-laws.
Okay. So your business is focusing a lot on the artificial intelligence. AI seems to be a bit of a buzzword at the moment in recruitment and in industry in general. So for listeners who are not quite sure what it is, what is artificial intelligence? What's the difference between machine learning and bots?
Oh,
as this is something that people do get a bit confused with. It's something that I personally get a bit confused with.
I think I get confused with that as well. The first thing, the TSM, or you may remember it as Taylor Sterling for those in the industry and in construction anyway. This has always been a standard recruitment company, contingency, and all that, the usual stuff. But we decided that in October of last year, that with things like LinkedIn and, basically there's virtually no one that my clients, that I knew that my clients couldn't get hold of. So unless it was a particular time constraint or whatever the case may be, it was especially going to see another economic glitch. When margins are tight, I guess something had to change. LinkedIn was a big tool for everybody to use, and although we've won many awards with it, most engaged, I think we've won awards ever since we had it, started it in 2014, I think. It's also been a big thorn in our side and the attention that we get is exactly the same attention, if not less than what our clients get. So they've kind of put a noose around our neck, I suppose, especially when the market crashed. So we had an idea, and we decided to make a big gutsy move in October of last year. And it was something I'd been thinking about for quite a while. A different concept, very resource consuming and time consuming. But I just had a little idea that maybe with the cost of data storage and AI, bearing in mind that I had no real idea what AI was. I just said, like you said, there's a buzzword out there. Decided to look into it a little bit more, and we found out that it could work. So to answer your question, what's the difference between machine learning, deep learning, chatbots, and all these things? I'm still learning myself, to be brutally honest with you. I spend a lot of my time, as you know, out in Kerala with the Accubits team who have joint ventured with us, a great bunch of chaps. Never known a bunch of millennials to work so hard. Those guys work round the clock. And every time I go over there, I feel as if I should take a pencil and a jotter, and I should be in the front row of the schoolroom, of the classroom. I think everybody's shouting and bawling about AI, and I do not think the vast majority of them, even the companies we've gone to see, when we try to explain our concept, our long-standing clients, they still don't understand really what AI is.
my understanding is that AI is basically, it's machine, to put it simply, it's machine learning, where algorithms are used to reflect how the mind thinks.
Yeah. I guess the whole thing with AI is the more data it receives, the better it gets. So you look at something like Google Home or Alexa, etc. At the start of them, they're very restricted, but the more and more that people use them and provide them data, the better they get. But it's not a case of you just give it access to a data source and off it goes. It's got to be monitored. So there's document learning, there's deep learning, there's machine learning, and it does work with multiple algorithms, not just one. And but it has to be very carefully monitored. I'll give you an example. We had to do quite what I thought was going to be easy, but actually quite a difficult task. And our guy said, look, I want you to sit down, get 20, 30 CVs, and bear in mind I've been doing it for 15 years, a year back in Scotland, and I've never overly enjoyed recruitment. I've said this to you before, I'm really bad with names. I don't particularly like people. I think recruitment's a horrible name in the industry for 99% of them. Anyway, down to the chase. Look at 20 CVs and go through each one and tell me exactly what you're looking at and what you're thinking at that time. That was an exceedingly difficult thing to do. I mean, it's like you want to go and put on a cup of tea, or you look through a phone bill, or you write yourself a letter. If you actually look at every single thing you're doing into the minute action, lifting the pen, clicking what, putting, making sure there's how much water is going to be. Is it water you're putting in it? It's coming at a tap, so that's how you know it's water, or is it because you see it's transparent and it's coming from there? So you really got to get into the little minute aspects. So when we look at a CV, which is actually CVs are the biggest nightmare in recruitment, and especially in AI, because there's no standard process. Everyone is different. And the way we assess, we've put that on paper or on a very, very large Excel sheet, which has now been transferred to an AI kind of template, however they do it. We're actually up to an octillion of variations. That's 27 zeros. I didn't know what an octillion was either. But it's to look at any CV, and that's just construction. That's just a normal civil engineer. And looking at every single little piece. And then we realise that in actual fact, we scan through them so quickly, we miss so much.
So what about most CVs that people write? It's generally not that accurate. A lot of people
lie. Can I swear in this podcast? Because they are generally absolute bull, yes.
Yeah, a lot of people lie on them. They lie about so many things, about their job experience, so... How do you overcome things like this?
Right, I can't give too many secrets away here what we're doing, but you're absolutely right. And when we kicked off, it was about 5 months ago, I think it was, I went to see a very nice chap called Nigel, who is the managing director of Millennium Solutions. Not a direct competitor, but he's got a good name in the industry. He's an ethical guy, and he actually had a real job. He was in construction. He's area manager for a couple of the big guys. Job. A real job, yeah, rather than as flesh peddlers.
So funny though. No, I'll let you finish first. Go on.
He's and one of the things that I forgot what I was going to say there. When I brought him on, we discussed about what we looked at when we saw CVs, and he brought up a really, really cool point that only look at the first third of what someone does in their job, because that's the thing they really do. The rest of it is what they want to think that you do or they're get involved with. And half of the things we've got to produce for our AI assessment system is the negative part, the negative positives or positive negatives there, and that's things like. If you're looking for a CEO, let's say, or a project director, or whatever it is finding out who was the actual person, the CEO, or were they making a cup of tea for the CEO? And it's the same with someone's a project director, or they're working on a particular project. What really were they doing? Were they really making a decision-making person, or were they an enabler, or were they actually, were they just, as I said, making coffees and Kit Kats for the staff who are actually building the project? So you're absolutely right. The majority of CVs are absolute garbage, but so are the job descriptions. I'm going to write a job description this year, and it's actually in the form of a letter to Santa Claus, because it is a wish list. It's all things you really, really want. But when you're going to be realistic with it, you're going to be at best 8 out of 10 for what you're looking for. So we've decided to look at assessing candidates in a slightly different way.
Okay. And how? What is that?
Okay. One of the questions that you'd suggest is to cover in this podcast is 5 things that AI makes possible, or advantages.
Yeah. My question was, what are the benefits of using AI in the recruitment process? And are you able to give 5 advantages?
It's fast. Now once it's working, and you put all that commitment, all that data into it, which is a really difficult thing, and there's someone really good looking after it. In our case, we've put 30 years of recruitment experience into it. It can be really fast. I mean, when we were up and running, we're looking at by the time I put on the kettle in the morning, our system will have assessed a couple of thousand CVs. If you bear in mind one job that's posted on, let's say, Bait or Naukri or something like that, or even LinkedIn, you're probably looking in a week, maybe 500, maybe 800 candidates. So before I even have my cup of coffee, an AI-powered system like ourselves will have screened all those very accurately, and by the time I sit down, it will have probably started a conversation and screened probably a quarter or a third of them before I even sit down and told all the ones that aren't quite right, but yet good CVs. It'll have told them, hi, great to hear from you. Want to be back in touch? Not quite right for this, but let's keep in contact. And it will keep in contact, unlike the lying recruiters out there who just don't because they haven't got the time. And the ones who aren't right for it, it'll put them in a little pot and dealt with it that way as well. So the speed of the system the speed of AI is probably one of the best things. Accuracy, look, you can argue this one as far as the cows come home. Having a human being look at a document and seeing different aspects of it rather than just that binary yes and no is always going to play. The human being is always going to give you the final yes or no, but it's about shifting through all the garbage. And this is why we come back to the CV side, because CVs are made from, as you said, slightly, they can be a little bit of a story on them, exaggerated. So it can find particular parts in that. So the accuracy thing is a really, really good one. And in actual fact, we've been doing an amazing task about really deciphering content in CVs and exactly what is good. So we've been looking at the same level of seniority rather than years experience, and looking at the actual job descriptions versus the actual experience, and putting a couple of hundred of these side by side, and then looking at all the words they have in common, the 2 words they have in common, the 2 phrases or 2 words put together they have in common, the 3 words they put together, and it's brought up some amazing things. So the accuracy is a really, really big one, and that goes against with the speed. I think the third one is now setting aside the actual development costs and the resource. They're really, really cheap. I mean, we will, so far with our initial gatherings, we will probably half the price of any decent sized recruitment team, half the resource, which is a massive thing for a $500 billion industry annually. We could probably take 50% off that.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yes, it's scary.
That's quite a bold prediction to make.
We're upsetting a lot of people. I mean, there's what we're going to do. I mean, there's a couple of people who have said they'll look forward to this idea fizzling out. But realistically, I mean, nothing's really changed in the recruitment industry since 2011, 12, when LinkedIn really kind of kicked off. And before that, it was applicant tracking systems. And before that, it was Monster.com. Before that, it was emails. Before that, it was a fax machine. And I'm still one of the guys who, has to apply for jobs looking at the newspaper and putting my CV in a thing called an envelope with a stamp on it and a handwritten letter, So things have to change, and our system will allow it to change. So look at the cost of it is a massive thing as well, and I'll go into it in a wee second in a bit more detail, which is a quite cool thing. But one of the things we started with is looking at, let's draw the perfect experience as far as from a recruiter's point of view or an employer's point of view and a candidate's point of view. Now, I kind of stole this from Airbnb. Masters of Scale is my favorite podcast with Reed from LinkedIn, ironically enough. And look, by no means are we trying to replace LinkedIn. We're actually complemented by it, or we complement it, I suppose. But the experience of a candidate, and having been on all three sides, having been an employer, being a candidate, and being a recruiter, I've seen the horrible bits of every side of it. So looking at the perfect experience, it's been a bit of an education for us. But when we phone our candidates back or we contact our candidates so regularly, we've got 100% satisfaction rating, and we're managing 1,000 candidates at the moment manually with 3 people, full-time job for 3 companies. And that's identifying, targeting, full interviews, and then keeping in contact with those people. That's 3 people. It's actually 4 people pretty much full-time. And we're adding 50, 80 more people onto a week. But with our new system, we can continue to keep in contact with every single one of those, and one person can cover 2,800 candidates with the perfect experience.
Wow, that's incredible. So to summarize the advantages, you've spoken about cost, time,
accuracy, and I guess the experience for the candidate, I suppose, when that comes into your chatbot, which we'll go back to, and the client experience,
Client experience.
And the last one, I think, is probably the most important one that everyone else is talking about, is seeing data trends and data patterns. I was overseeing my guys in Kerala. Do you know the relationship between beer and nappies?
No idea.
Never heard of it before. I thought it was a joke. I really thought it was a joke. And apparently there was a chain of supermarkets where they had some stores, and they put in their document learning and they put in their AI to cover their stock and see trends, etc. And it makes sense when you hear it. But there was a definite relationship between people buying Pampers and people buying beer, because all your young guys going out, having a good time, going to the pub, having beers with their friends, if you're into that sort of thing, of course. Well, when they have a kid, they can't have that. So they still want a beer, so they go to the supermarket, run out of nappies again, go there, and then I can't go to the pub because I've got baby bath time. But do you know what? After baby bath time, I'm going to have a beer. So there it goes. So they made a big move, and they changed the location to put the beer but on the way from the Pampers to the aisle.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That is so interesting that, just recognizing these little trends, and they can change things, like you say, like positioning the beer really close in the supermarket to enhance sales.
The big data they're getting, even the most minute changes they can get. There's one big American insurance companies, I think they give $1 million dirhams to freelancing out there, or putting it out to someone who can, maybe Netflix, I think, gave $1 million to find out if they could increase the matching of what you like. Remember that, little, if you got Netflix, that little percentage thing comes up, says, because you watch this, you're going to love this, that kind of thing. That's
right, yeah.
And I think it was I can't remember exactly what it was, so please don't sue me for it. But it was like $1 million, where it was if they could get like 3 or 4% more accuracy. And the same with insurance companies. So the big data, I think, is one of the massive things that AI can certainly help with. Not just reading it, but getting it as well. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably one of the biggest ones.
It's really interesting. Okay, we've spoken about the advantages of AI, not only in recruitment, but in other industries too. What would you say are the disadvantages?
I think one of the recruitment thing was the big shout about is, they brought this thing about AI, about how many jobs are going to be lost. And everybody's kind of terrified. Well, it's not really, you shouldn't be terrified. It just means go and get the better jobs, and hopefully that will make us evolve a little bit more. I think with recruitment, there still has to be the human touch. you're still dealing with someone's life. They're, you're asking someone to commit for the next 4 years or so for someone's life, but they've got responsibilities, they've got salaries, especially here in the Middle East. It's not nice when you're unemployed, especially when you can't just pop over to Oman or Qatar or wherever it is to go and renew your visa. It's a really big responsibility. So you have to have that kind of human element to it. So I guess that's one slight disadvantage, which I'm fairly confident we've overcome that, because every candidate we have has got that human contact as well. Other disadvantages of it. It can be a little bit annoying. I think you might discover this maybe yourself. I'm sure like your followers and your listeners will live as well. The chatbot thing. Okay, you've got the really annoying and the golden rule apparently now for chatbots is don't pretend you're anything but a chatbot.
Yeah, the chatbots drive me mad. In fact, these days, whenever I speak to people online, my first question is, "Are you a human?"
I think my wife probably asks me that quite regularly as well. I think if a chatbot, if it's informative, it's actually really good. I mean, there's a delivery. Communication is what makes the difference for what we're doing. Absolutely. I mean, I look at all the people I've spoken to, I've dealt with, I've heard from, I've got their CV. Great people, just wasn't right for the right time, and it's impossible to contact them all, to keep in contact with them. It's impossible when you're trying to, when clients aren't giving you the feedback, and you can't go back to every candidate straight away. You just do not have the time, and unfortunately, clients don't see that.
I can really see how they can work for like people just phoning up for like simple stuff that could be answered.
Easily,
like just the routine stuff. I can see that they do have a place, but when you want to speak to a person, and I think we are just used to having that human touch, and we're used to, just picking up the phone and speaking to someone. But I think as it evolves over time, I think it's a generational thing. Maybe the younger generation, they're probably more tuned into the whole chatbot thing.
Absolutely.
Whereas kind of my generation, which I think is probably your generation too, it's kind of, we would just pick up the phone and, you'd want to speak to a person. But quite often that person, would just be answering what a chatbot could, unless it's something really complicated.
You've been here a while as well, as I've 15 years, and I think a couple of the banks that when I've phoned up and I've had problems with cards, etc., the customer service is absolutely, I'm a bit Scottish here, complete and utter mince. So if you look at it, try and look at it a different way. If you can get a chatbot to do the basic stuff, for instance, I got a package delivered from one of the courier companies, and they sent me it on WhatsApp, not the package, but they said, where do you want this delivered? They said, press 1 for this, press 2 for this, what time, AM, PM, what, and great, fantastic. I knew exactly when it was coming. It didn't actually get there on time, but I don't blame that on the bot, on the chatbot. That was the person's problem. But if you can get a chatbot or some way to automate, and that's really all this comes down to, all the automation, automate 60% or 40 or even 10% of the mainstream calls. Take 999 or 911 here. Normally in the back in the UK, you press 999, someone picks up, do you want ambulance, police or fire engine? Well, wouldn't it just be easy to have a machine that could listen to that and hear it? So the actual human, first of all, the response time is a lot faster, but secondly, you could put your efforts or the resources into making the actual human conversations a lot better. You could reduce your team from 10 down to 5 and make them 5 better people, or put the extra I say better, I mean either more able, more professional, or put that money towards more training, more development for those people. So I think there's definitely things that it will be able to take over, and there's other things that will just continue to really annoy you.
Yeah, and I think if a chatbot's done really well, it can work. It can work fantastically. I sent you that example. I can't remember the name of the company now, but there was it was an article about a chatbot in this company, and the chatbot actually receives thank you cards from the customers.
A little bit. Look, there's some weird people out there. There's definitely some weird people out there.
Because the customers really identify it as being like a human.
Well, I mean, you've got a nice accent, and this is the kind of the killer for people like me. It sounds like, you know, Scottish, let's just say. And there's a couple of sort of funny sketches, but I get really frustrated because I see, you know, even I've got Google Home. And I listen to a fantastic radio station. I have done for nearly 20 years or so, and it's called Radio Paradise. And I'd say probably 50% of the time, actually more than that, about 80% of the time, even I've had that Google Home for maybe 2 years, it still does not understand my accent. And it says the weirdest thing. I've got a 2-year-old who understands more than that, you know? So there's the, you know, in our system it does it can be voice activated, etc. Our new ones, but yeah, I can certainly see. So what we've done is we're trying to kind of cross that, because a lot of the, you know, our industry, construction, no offense to anyone's listening in the industry, but we're not the most advanced guys. Yeah, there's some cool technologies and it's kind of we're pushing innovation, but we still want to make it button pressing kind of stuff. So that's what we've tried to do, is make it really fast, really simple, really frustrating. Really unfrustrating. Forgive me. Yes, just simplify the projects, simplify them for old codgers like me.
I think you pretty much answered one of my questions, which was, do you think there's a place in the future for recruitment companies using traditional methods? Is AI going to take over? Now, you did just say that recruitment's always going to need that human touch, but in terms of kind of ratio, what ratio would you say in the future? Like, you know, maybe if we can look into the future, you know, let's say 2025, what do you predict? Where do you see recruitment and AI? What ratio would you say is going to be AI, and what ratio is going to be humans?
I think the question you want to ask yourself is, what ratio of humans are actually going to be humans? I don't know if you follow all the gene splicing and the CRISPR stuff, but that is the biggest fear I've got. I mean, it was only 5 years ago or something, if that, they managed to map the entire genome, and now they're cutting and pasting it like it's, you know, text and an email. So you design our babies, and then there'll be this. I think what we're going to be doing in 2025, at the rate and the acceleration is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, some of the things that my guys in Accubits can do is utterly terrifying. And they work with, you know, NASA, they work with United Postal Service, and, you know, Smart to Buy. There's a lot of the really kind of advanced guys, and the technologies they are bringing out, which we're harnessing a lot of them. I mean, for instance, one of the things that we've done very differently, not trying to, you know, give you a sales pitch at all, but we've got a really, really cool board of advisors. And there's one guy, Graham in particular, who's an exceedingly talented chap, a real big HR buff. Really, really, I mean, I wish I could understand half the things, or even a quarter of the things that he talks about. But rather than what we decided to do, rather than looking at assess the CV, because most people look at a CV and go, right, that's for that job. Project manager is for that job. Well, our system doesn't do that. So we actually assess every single job that person has done against company, location, their title, their responsibilities, what they've actually done with it. And then we've done that across 20 other disciplines. So, for instance, in our case, how strong were they in every job in health and safety, in mechanical, and electrical, and project management, and quality control. Every single thing is assessed when that job was, even though there might be a project manager all their life, but what they're actually involved within that role, and then assesses that. Then our system then looks at what environment they're in. So were they working for an EMAR or an Akil or DAMAC, or were they working for a big guy like a Parsons or AECOM or Atkins or something like that, or was it a contractor or subcontractor? So looking at the actual environment of what they're looking at, and then it assesses the personal sort of situation. Now, I might get scorned for this, but if I'm a single guy with no kids, should I get more salary than someone else who has got 10 kids who the company has to pay 10 medicals, 10 annual flights, etc. Well, the answer to the question, unfortunately, is yes, I should get paid more because I've made that choice. So we can then assess, and I might be more flexible in my geographical options. So we assess the environment, we assess the skill set, we assess the actual the personal situation of them, and then what we're looking to do now is actually assess the, as you were to bring up, the emotional intelligence, the agility, the actual, what is the characteristics. So identified transferable skill sets. Now we're going to find out, is that person wanting to be the best project manager there's ever been, or is that person wanting to just go up the ladder to be a PD, go into the C-suite kind of roles. So our environment is changing the way that we look at someone, which the HR guys love, but unfortunately the people who are actually employing them have still got a really hard time looking at it, especially in our industry. They say, I've known this guy for years, he's going to take over this role, but in actual fact, is that person the right person to go for? No. Well, okay, let's assess this person, and in actual fact, this lass over here, this woman who's been doing the role for 2 years, is exactly the characteristics of what it's going to take that role to that next move up, or replacing someone who's gone. So it's looking at, and it's a massive education for me as well.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly interesting. Just touching on the EI aspect, emotional intelligence, I think I was telling you about a gentleman that I interviewed on this podcast, Dr. Dixon, and he has his own software, EmoWave, that measures emotional intelligence. And he says that I think he would like to get into kind of the recruitment, job searching, and he really feels that. I had the test undertaken and it was absolutely incredible. I had kind of like the basic test and the more in-depth test, and it was incredible what information that he was able to give me about me just through me talking into a microphone, because it was all on your voice.
That's a bit
your
scary.
Emotional intelligence. Yeah. Like he literally took it back right down to when I was born. And this was all measured. I had to speak into a microphone for like 5 minutes. And
really?
It didn't matter.
Definitely words, get me in touch with this guy.
Yeah, the words that I was saying weren't important. I could have been talking about anything. It was just kind of the tonality and everything of your voice. And it was so interesting. I went into it really skeptical. But then when I had the more in-depth reading from him, and he was saying so many things that were true, not only about my personality, but about my background and about my childhood. And it was just so incredibly accurate. And he feels that within the recruitment process, that his invention would, really be able to help recruitment companies target the best and the right candidates.
I think a lot of it is down to, especially in the cultural fit, not just for the company, but for the job. So one of the things that we've looked at, we're on the next phase coming up in the early part of next year, is to put little 20-second videos of the people. Even our interviewing side of it is, our video interviewing is all, it's a little bit scary, and you've mentioned it yourself, people talking a bit of garbage, especially in interviews, and especially over here. The cost to bring someone into a company, having run my own company for a number of years now, visa costs and medicals, etc. It's a massive cost, especially for a small company. And our system will still look at all your micro expressions, check the stress levels in your voice, and just say, are you talking absolute garbage, or can you actually do this? Some would say, is that an ethical thing to do? Well, yeah, absolutely. It's definitely subject to error, because there might be someone who's a little bit nervous, or they might have had too many coffees. But I'd like to chat to your guy and see there's some other insights that we're looking at putting that in place.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure cool. I'd be able to link you up to him. So, I think we've been chatting now for about 34 minutes, and we've covered quite a lot of things. I think we've pretty much covered everything that I wanted to cover here. And a lot of the questions, I did write a few questions down beforehand, and I'm just looking into them. And I think there's just one more question now, actually, that I'd like answering. So, how are you going to introduce AI into all parts of the organisation?
Right. Well, I think one of the things we had this initial idea for this platform, and it's kind of spiraled out of control a little bit because we listened to we were around all our clients, and there were some of the really, really big guys, and they're like, if you can do that, some of the guys are like, well, we're going to take this globally if we can do that. And that's us just talking about the basics of it. The AI aspects, there's so many little things. It's about, we identify the 4 big problems. And that's not just identifying the actual individuals, but obviously just keeping your talent pool up to date. But one of the really cool bits, the fun bit, is the efficiency tools. So our system, if you need a new marketing manager, you just say it into your phone. Just say, I need a new marketing manager. I need them 10 years experience in the GCC. I want them at this level. This is the kind of salary I'm looking to pay. And it will show them all up.
You just say it into your phone.
It'll bring the top 3.
Speak into your phone, and then it's going to bring them up.
Exactly what you're looking for. It's what's right for you. And then you can say, well, can you organise some interviews for that? And
have you tested this yet?
Individually, some of the bolt-ons have been tested, but our AI guys have given us a lot of confidence in what they've done before and what they can do, and a number of them actually exist already. The interview bots, etc. But we're just going to do it with a slight difference. We're going to bring all of them are spread out. It's about bringing these things all together. But it'll tell you if there's rain on the way to the trade centre, and it'll book you an Uber. It's that sort of the time to leave 10 minutes early, prep the candidate, make sure you've got all the details, make sure you've got a pen and paper with them, even tell them how to shake someone's hand properly. Big problem I've got in this country.
Wow. How long has your company been working on this project?
The concept's been thinking for quite a while, but we made the big move in October. In all honesty, we made a massive mistake that we had one particular company where introduced to an AI solutions guys, and we spent 7 months and 5 days before they were meant to come up with the first milestone. They told us they couldn't do it, but there was a path to follow there, and a big lesson learned. One thing I would say about the AI thing in recruitment, there's a lot of companies out there utilizing AI, and the efficiency tools are cool, but there's a big there's still going to be a problem, and it's the problem is about, especially in these sort of emerging markets, it's about keeping the candidate informed and keeping the company I suppose keeping the details all up to date and doing it in the right way. So what we've done is sat and watched all the other companies trying to do their AI, etc., but getting bored halfway through. They start to realize how much it's going to cost them to start with, and they try and put the data in, and no one's really managing the data, and it's only as good as the details you give it. And they all do individual, but it's still going to come up with the same problem. Is your data is going to be out of date really quickly, because especially in these sort of markets when there's a lot of people looking for a certain amount of talent. Now our system only targets this 70-80% of the core skill set of what a company needs. It will still need its internal recruiters or even recruitment companies to go and look for the key, those unicorns out there. But what we identify and what we're from a still know we are entirely unique for is, well, let me give an analogy for it. Not being sexist here, but you like shoes?
Oh, I love shoes.
Shoes, right?
Love
okay.
shoes.
So I was chatting to one of my friends there and trying to explain to him, and he likes watches. So I said, I said to him, well, let's look at you. How many brands of shoes would you say that you would like to be kept up to date with? Anything new or cool or discounts or sales or Christmas? Roughly how many brands?
I'd say about three brands.
Really? Only 3? Only 3 brands. Okay, exception to the rule then, right?
But I said the wrong thing.
No, it's fine. I think it's 3. But he said, that's where the watch. He said, well, probably 8, maybe 9.
Okay.
I said, right, fine. So then tell me, if you're going to take another job, so again in construction, if you're going to take another job, how many companies would you consider would be the right move for you to take? And he said, yeah, probably about 5 or 6. So how about each of those companies phones you every 60 days or so and tells you and asks you to go through their details again? And I said, well, that's going to pee me off a bit. I said, well, how about if you only get interviewed once and a little note comes through every 60 days, like when your salary reaches your bank account, and you can pop on a little link there. It'll say, are your details the same? Yes. Pop onto your profile, make sure it's absolutely lovely. All those really cool, really precise details, even down to how old your kids are, if you've got any, because that's cost to company, etc. And you can see every company that you match their criteria and you want to be considered by them. You know that each of those has got your live data and exactly how much of it, how much interest you are to them at that point. So they may not be looking for project management, they may be looking for commercial people or marketing people. So it'll tell you exactly, so there's no frustration, you know exactly where your CV is going. There's a massive thing about data at the moment as well, GDPR. You know exactly where your CV is. It's not just going onto a website and then going to absolutely every Tom, Dick and Harry who may or may not be interested in you, but maybe some recruiter thinks they can get some cash out of it some way. But you know, you've got complete control and complete transparency of exactly what that company is looking for, and knowing that you are what they are looking for as a broad criteria. Completely changed. So rather than having separate companies come to you all the time, this basically brings them all together. And it means that you've basically got I guess you would be, it's like the Amazon, not the place, but the website. So you go to one place to get all the things you really, really need. And I guess it's like that.
When you say Amazon, no one thinks of the place.
No. The
place doesn't even exist.
So it's, yeah.
Amazon is that huge.
Do you know one of the biggest rivers in the world is actually on top of the Amazon rainforest? On top of it.
I didn't know that.
It's just humidity in the air. It's a massive river. Anyway, useless trivia information.
Just before we bring this to a close, I'm just really interested to know, like, what are the traditional, like, you've spoke about what AI can do to recruitment and how it can save time, and that you can speak, into your computer or your laptop or your phone, and say you want a CEO or whatever, and they can give you like 3-4 different candidates that would be suitable for the role. What would be the traditional method that you would have to take? What has traditionally been the method that recruitment consultants take to identify these people?
Oh, you want the truth?
Yes.
All right. Okay. That's okay. I'm good for that. Alas, I'm stepping out of mainstream recruitment. Yay. Okay, it's quite interesting because I've just been sitting with my business coach and one of the advisors, just looking through how we can get the message out for what we're doing, because it's never been done before and people don't understand how it works. And I said, well, let's look at what your standard process is. Let's just look at efficiency. So are you talking about internal or are you talking about consultancy?
What do you mean by internal and consultancy?
If you're looking for an internal recruiter, for a recruiter who's working specifically for a company, say like Google. I mean, Google's very famous for having a really, really intense recruitment process with other internal recruiters. They don't use many external ones. Or are you looking for an external company like the big boys or even small guys, the Hays, the Adecos, all those kind of guys.
I wasn't really asking the question with internal or external recruitment in mind.
Just the general process.
I think because I'm not from a recruitment background, I wasn't quite familiar with that. So.
Oh, you're close. You're insurance, so that's close enough.
Yeah. I'm in one of the other. Yeah. One of the other hated.
So you're selling double glazing windows or used cars and.
Yeah. Well, there's three. I'd say there's probably three industries I don't know if that's the right...
feed from the bottom.
3 industries in the UAE that have got quite a bad reputation.
Yeah, and not just in the UAE. I mean,
I've worked
globally.
in one of them, which is financial services.
Yeah.
Then I'd say recruitment, and then what would you say the third one is?
Well, I would say used cars or double glazing, but I'm not quite sure about that one
No,
over here.
I'd say real estate.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Oh,
yeah,
goodness,
so real estate agents, financial advisors, and recruitment consultants, they're probably seen as, the
worst. I mean,
the
this is
the
what I've been
low in the
battling
Middle
for
East.
for 15 years. And it's taken me 15 years to really get... I mean, there's always going to be haters out there, but to get a reputation of ethics professionalism, and I've just been put onto, I said, earlier, an ambassadors for women in construction. It's a big thing. The gender diversity was something that we've been fighting for ages in a very difficult land and a very difficult industry to do that. I've also been put in the adjudicator, being a judge for all the contractors and consultants of the year, which is amazing. No recruiter's ever done that before.
Look, it's like any job. There's always going to be good and bad people in the industry, isn't there? There's always going to be bad people.
Like 200 nationalities over here, and most of them are the worst ones.
Exactly. There's always going to be bad people, especially in an unregulated market like it is out here, that are going to give the industry a bad name.
So let me put the process down very, very easily. Okay. Job comes on. Generally panic buy. Okay, you'll try to look through the ATS system, your applicant tracking system, and see if there's anyone you've used recently beforehand. Cut some corners. Then you're going to put adverts everywhere you can. All right, and that's maybe on your internal site. You're going to put them on all the other job sites. You can then start looking at things like LinkedIn, etc. as well. That will get you a considerable amount of garbage. You're probably going to look at maybe 2%, if you're lucky, of your applicants are going to fit for what you're actually looking for. Good, bad, and different. Right? You might get guys who are pastry makers and looking for, reckon they could build the next, Burj Khalifa. And then you start searching for the particular people. You might go through your database, see if there's anyone there. Unlikely, because it's probably not kept up to date, and everybody changes their jobs and mobile numbers, and so often here. And then you start going through your LinkedIn, identifying people and trying to contact them. Now that can take, sometimes they come back really quickly, sometimes it can take a week, maybe 10 days to come in the back. And then you get that shortlist together as best you can. You tell them, in my experience, not talking about myself or anyone to do with my company, but asking the industry, they tend to tell them what they want to hear about the job, about the situation, which is not a cool way to do it. And then they'll get those CVs, or even they might not even speak to the person. I mean, I've just done an article there about privacy and professionalism in the industry because of that big 200,000 leak of CVs from one of the job sites. I've had guys phone me up and go, Marcus, why the hell's my CV just landed on my boss's desk? And I say, well, it hasn't got my letterhead on it. But that does happen. I actually supposed to sat down with a guy who had his own CV with someone else's name on the top of it sent to him. Utterly, I mean, the things that they go on is utterly ridiculous. But they'll basically get that CV, and so not all cases, but in most of the cases that I know of anyway, because they're very KPI driven. They've interviewed that candidate for that particular job, but they will also send that candidate to every single company who may or may not be interested. And you get good recruiters who know these are the 5 companies who may be interested in this person, or you'll get the not so good ones hitting KPIs who will send someone, project manager of a consultant who works on roads and bridges. They'll send it to oil and gas companies. They'll send it to every Tom, Dick and Harry out there. And then your candidates get no control over where their CVs are going. And then they generally won't get back to them with any feedback. And that's the kind of scenario. And then when they do actually get through the process and they organise interviews, nicey, happy, best friends forever, all they're really particularly caring about is getting that commission in the pocket and starting over again.
Okay.
But there are some exceptions to the rule. There are some really good recruiters out there. I just don't meet many of them.
Okay.
Is that rant enough?
Yes, I've got one last question for you before we end this podcast. We've spoken, or you've mentioned LinkedIn quite a lot during this podcast.
Yes.
How successful, I'm just really intrigued to know, does LinkedIn really work when you're looking for a job? So many people, especially in this region, that's their first point of contact. They'll go onto the job section of LinkedIn. Do recruiters actually use that? I know a lot of jobs are posted, but I have actually heard that it's just procedure that people do that, and people don't even look at the applications. But yeah.
It's impossible to look at all the applications. You know, ATSs are the applicant tracking systems. They'll filter through, look for keywords within those applications, but it is impossible. It's difficult because it's hard because you miss some really good candidates you might not need right there, but for later on. If you're a job seeker, pick and choose your recruiter very carefully because you're going to disclose intimate detail about your situation, your financial, your personal situation. And that person is going to represent you and meant to look after you. So be very careful about looking for those people, and don't put all your eggs in one basket. Just because one recruiter says, "Oh, you'll get you a job with these companies, etc." Don't spread yourself around, but pick one or two. Don't pick 10 people. It doesn't do anyone any good. It just becomes a battleground. There's more hassle than it's worth for the employer, so he just throws that CV aside and then gets one that they find themselves. LinkedIn, if you see a job, yes, so you may get 1 or 2%. You're going to find the right person. Occasionally, there's more if you're lucky, but it will gather data. I mean, a lot of recruiters out there pay, and a lot of employers pay for advertising. So even if they don't want something, they're still going to put the advert up there to get the CVs so they might need later on. Generally, if it's through a recruiter, if you're out there, keep your details up to date on LinkedIn. The headhunter recruiter, they'll find you. So keep your eyes on the in-mails. They will find you. But if you're really, really urgent and looking for a job, make sure your CV looks good. You don't really need to go and get someone to pay for it to look good. Just have a chat with a decent recruiter and they'll say, do this, do this, do that, and make it look presentable. And it reflects you, not edit it, but make sure it looks good. Like getting a job out here some of this is not an easy thing. Some people are always looking for a Middle Eastern experience, but you just got to be at the right place at the right time and speak to the right people. Just pick and choose your employer, pick and choose your recruiter, and make sure the CV looks effective, but isn't full of anything that you're going to get caught out when you're at the interview.
Excellent. Marcus, thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you.
Really appreciate you coming on the podcast. And I'd like to thank Rove Hotel in Dubai Marina for allowing us to record the podcast in their venue and for their never-ending support for this podcast. Thanks again, Marcus.
Pleasure. Great to see you.